We've looked at the power of the media to expose and persuade, but today we're going to be talking about some of the contemporary understanding of the role of the media. In the last 15 years, there's been a lot of new research on the role of the media that has gone outside of the journalism and journalism studies fields and has been done by political scientists, economists, sociologists, and others. As we know, the media sets the agenda for policy debate, and that open discussion of ideas is critical for both economic development and political freedom. That watchdog role of the journalist of keeping government honest and business accountable is critical. And of course, that was something that the global muckrakers excelled in. But beyond that, we now know even more about what the media can do. One key point is the agenda-setting function. By deciding to cover certain subjects or cover them in a certain way, the media sort of signals to larger society what matters and how it should be addressed. For example, if the media covers volcanic eruptions instead of food shortages, they're actually going to put that on the agenda and people will start thinking that's more important. Some scholars, including the economist Alexander Dyke, have looked at the role that the media can play in promoting corporate governance. Dyke focused on reputational effects and found that companies will change their behavior because they're worried about their reputation. So journalists who can write about big business can actually change the way companies behave. There are many examples of global muckrakers who have written about corporate misbehavior. The journalist who exposed the way that the food company Nestle was marketing its infant food formula to mothers in developing countries, or the journalists who wrote about labor conditions and the subcontractors that were supplying to Nike, or to Foxconn, which makes Apple products. All of those are great examples of global muckraking about corporate behavior. Economists and political scientists who study media effects assume that having information changes behavior or causes some kind of other reaction. But when they're doing research, they need to look for measurable effects. So one of the things that researchers actually look for is voting patterns. They look to see how many people vote, if their turnout is higher after new information is received, and whether they vote out incumbents, because that could suggest that people are unhappy and that they're processing new information and they're voting accordingly. And knowing that this can happen, politicians become more aware of public opinion and more responsive to it. And at the same time, voters become choosier, and so they vote out politicians who they feel are not representing their interests. Therefore, turnover of politicians is considered a key indicator of the role of the media in the political process. Economist Tim Besley found that turnover of elected officials is higher in places where there is more information available. Media presence can also affect government spending. David Stromberg has found that the presence of media affects government spending. Areas where there's more media penetration often receive more government funding. There are tangible and intangible ways that the media can have effect. Sometimes by just existing, it's like being a scarecrow. It just scares people into good behavior. Companies, government agencies know that they're being watched, and they just make sure that they clean up their act so that they don't get any bad publicity. Or a phone call from a journalist can also kind of remind people that they need to do something because they just don't want to be in the headlines.
Ready to ask. Say, I've got a hot story here.
Then there's watchdog, which is actually keeping an eye on government agencies or on companies and reporting when they break the law, back to the idea of naming and shaming that we talked about earlier. By stirring up public outrage, journalists and global muckraking can sort of reinforce government agencies that are already working on a problem. As well as these big picture effects that media can have, it can do a whole lot of small things. Around the world, people call the local media outlet, the newspaper, TV, radio station, when there's a pothole in the street that needs fixing. Or when the courts aren't acting quickly enough, people will call up the media and try to get some coverage. Or when there's a consumer safety problem, a store won't take something back. So there's a lot of smaller ways that media can have an impact. And of course, a lot of the global muckraking that's been done has been about things like product safety or consumer safety. In the US, the sort of classic line about the media was that it was supposed to afflict the comfortable and comfort the afflicted. So go after the big powers, sort of make sure that they're behaving as they should be. In Africa, after the colonial era, the idea was that the media would bring communities together and it helped societies develop economically. Now, we know that although the world has enormous hopes for the media, and so many different groups and agencies and campaigners have tried to get the media sort of on their side to push the causes that they care about, there are limits, of course, to what the media can do. There have to be institutions that are accountable. There need to be mechanisms of redress, like elections, so people can vote out politicians, or courts that can actually enforce the laws. Individual naming and shaming does not address larger structural problems. Pratt and Stromberg note that government responsiveness can lead to pandering. It may be actually better to have government make decisions on their merit and not because of media pressure. Next week, we're going to look at some cases of individual global muckrakers and when they had an impact. Obviously, this is a complicated question, and there are many, many things that make a difference or don't. But for now, let's just think about 3 points. 1, governments are more responsive if they think they're going to be voted out of office. 2, companies will change sometimes because of naming and shaming, but not always. Naming and shaming does not have a systematic effect. It does not solve systemic problems. 3, muckraking is more effective when there are other groups or other agencies that are already trying to solve problems. Then the journalism can sort of feed into that and have a huge impact.